Hello and welcome to the Berkcast, the How to Train a Dragon podcast. I'm your host, HC. With me are.
Rush 2112.
Wolf.
And King of the Wilder West, or Haddock.
Hmm. And the reason we have Haddock with us today, aside from the fact that, well, it's Haddock, so, why not? Is because today we are talking about something that we've been meaning to talk about since this podcast was first envisioned. The thing is, we have problem getting into stuff, so we're only getting to it now, almost 3 years after we started.
Just listen to last week's episode. We had a real problem getting to the end of that one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. With that said, let's talk about one of the best known things about How to Train a Dragon, the music, the soundtrack.
I am so excited to be here and be able to talk about the music here. So thank you so much for having me, and this is going to be great. So much to talk about with the How to Train Your Dragon scores.
I want to put this into context for the listeners of how long it's been. Haddock and I geeked out about this the first episode Haddock was on. So it's like it's been that long.
The second one, you went on the first one with the books.
The first one I was on with Haddock. How about that?
Okay.
Which I think was only a week after the first one. So yeah it's been a while.
So I think it's been a year and a half since then.
Yeah, and
wow.
So that's how long it takes my ideas to get into scripts, guys.
Hey,
is clearly a dictator.
It's good that we waited, because now that we have waited, we have the hidden world to talk about as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
don't
that's
defend
true.
him.
Haddock, as you can see, we all love each other here in the main casters. I don't know what you're talking about. We don't hate each other at all. At all.
Your statement just, got so much immediate resonating agreement in that, response from everybody.
Welcome to the Berkcast.
Oh, I'm sorry. Should we say again?
Yeah, let's go with again.
Oh.
Anyway, let's start talking about the soundtracks. Basically just how much do you think they contribute to the movies? Because when you talk about How to Train a Dragon, this is the one. The soundtrack is one of the things that kind of pops into people's minds the most. And also, I think, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think this is probably the first one anyway. Is probably the only animated movie that got nominated for best soundtrack.
I'm trying to remember. I don't follow this closely enough to confirm or deny.
Well, time for some Googling, I guess. But I think you're right on that.
Regardless, it's praise well deserved.
Yeah, and may I just say that if we want to talk about Oscar snubs, how in the hell did Social Network win Best Soundtrack? I like the movie, but I don't remember anything about the soundtrack.
Yeah, that was frustrating.
Yeah, who made that decision? I want to kick his ass.
Yeah, I remember hearing that and being like, okay, no, that's not correct.
This is not a correct. Academy is wrong. Yeah. On that note, I don't trust the Oscars for a long time now. But yeah, so basically, in terms of in the soundtracks themselves, again, a lot of people say the soundtracks are the reasons they watch these movies. These are some people who say this is the best thing about these movies. I even remember there was a rumor. I'm not sure how valid this is anymore, that John Paul, the composer of all three films, wasn't going to return to do the Hidden World score, and people were actually mad about this. This is how much people love these soundtracks.
So I remember that rumor, and I believe it was because Powell was taking a little bit of a break, and so everybody started to get afraid that Powell was just going to completely retire or something and not come back for the hidden world at all, I think, was people's fears. Because I know that, for instance, Powell helped with the first 2 Kung Fu Panda movies, but wasn't in the third. So people started to extract from that and think, oh, he won't have a possibility of coming back to the hidden world either. And I think that was more or less the discussion point.
Because I just remember there was a rumor that he might not come back. Like that he said, either because I think this was also during the time Hidden World was supposed to come out. You know, it was supposed to come out in 2016, 2017. So I think when it still had that time frame, you know, that release window, people just said that, you know, he just finished composing the second film, and so he was taking a break. And, you know, maybe not coming back for the third one. I don't remember the full story, but the fact that there was even a discussion about this and people got mad, and when the movie was delayed to 2018, people were actually taking it as a good sign that this might allow him to rest and come back. So again, people really care about this because this sounds like so damn good.
It is true. I do want to make a quick note just about that, because we are talking about whether or not Powell would have come back to the hidden world at different time frames. Is that there's this impression that it's one person doing a soundtrack for a movie when that is far from the case. The sentence "score by John Powell" is actually very deceiving. If it's all right, I actually prepared a list of the other orchestrators that were involved in the How to Train Your Dragon movies, if you want me to list them off and basically show people the team.
You know, yeah, like, you know, if there's one thing this is good for, is that, you know, we could actually appreciate all of the people who worked hard to give us these beautiful tracks. So go right ahead.
Yeah, and
Alright, so
question, do you have like other works they worked on too? That'd be cool. I mean, obviously that's an afterthought, but
I can't do that. And honestly, I'm not even going to be listing everybody. If you guys want to see everybody, actually go to IMDb, pull up the pamphlets for the soundtracks if you bought them physically by CD. I know I do it. I don't know how many other people are in the Stone Age with me, but there's a lot of people.
I am.
Yay, high five. All right. So, but these are just some of the orchestrators. And some of them are going to be
some of our audience asking, what is a CD?
don't
Hey, Hicktooth gets vinyl, so
this is true.
Like you know, I just saw like a show, like sort of a reality competition show about 2 group of kids trying to do an escape room and seeing which group finishes it first. And then they actually give them a chance to. They give them a bunch of VHS tapes of movies that they need to do something with them. And one of the kids starts to say, "I'm not sure if you know this, but a long time ago there was this thing called a VHS. People used to watch movies of it." And I'm like, "Holy shit!
Cringe.
Kids don't know what VHSs are."
Ew.
Oh no.
Yeah, that ages me. Anyway, all right, so these orchestrators, for people who don't know what an orchestrator is basically it means that you take the melody that you're given and you compose it for all of the instruments. So you basically, you know, give the music to the orchestra and figure out what instrument is playing what part. So these orchestrators, some of them were from the first movie, some were the second, some are the third, some are a combination thereof. I'm not going to go through each of them because that would take too much time. But we should also thank these people for the How to Train Your Dragon soundtrack sounding as good as it is. We want to talk about John Ashton, Thomas, Dominic Lewis, James McKee Smith, Michael Mollo, Paul Monsey, Steven Schneider, Dave Metzer, Angus O'Sullivan, Jessica Wales, Anthony Willis, Andrew Kinney, Randy Kerber, Thomas Lawrence, Pete Anthony, Jermaine Franco, Jeff at MyGen, I mispronounced that one, sorry, Batu Sainer, Jeff Lawson, John Cole, and Rick Giovinazzo. So yes, it is definitely not one person who creates these soundtracks. It is a full team of people. Yes.
I feel like HT knows this the best because he works in the film, so he knows how many people and moving parts there are.
Well, you say that, but you know, the composing side is gonna Like this is I'm giving it to the people who know what they're doing. This is I've done my job. You do yours. I'll just be amazed at the end of it. So
Fair enough, I guess.
yeah, but yeah. So I think we can just agree by talking about this until now is that we all love these soundtracks. I think it's safe to assume.
Mm-hmm.
Wolf, you obviously have an opinion that's not like our own. So aside of being
That was a
wrong,
joke.
tell
That
yeah,
was a
I know,
joke.
I know. I'm just you know me. I drag the joke because that's what we do. But
That's what you do. It's what
Yeah.
you shouldn't do. But anyways.
but yeah. So we talked about the soundtracks and how much they impact the movie. Actually, that's something I want to ask you. When you watch the movie, how much does the soundtrack really drags you into the experience?
I will let other people respond before me.
Oh, that way, yes, that way Haddock can upstage us. All right, I'll get it out of the way. Music. How about this? Let's surround it with the two music people here. So, music is like a daily part of my life. Like, I will listen to music while working. I probably code better when I listen to music. And when my fiance is out of town, like today, I listen to music while I'm making food. I don't know if that actually makes me cook better. Probably doesn't. Either way, I just can't get away from music. So, regardless of the movie, music will always drag me into it. Now, there's a delicate balance between too much music and no music. In this case, let's say the first movie. I'll just kind of go quickly through the first all of the movies. So, the first movie, that's like probably the most notable because that's where you get your base soundtrack from that's reused. You get all the elements, and it has a very good balance of using the music when it's supposed to on the key points and not. And of course, there's also there's actual soundtrack elements, and then there's just small blips of orchestration. Let's say when Hiccup is trying to unstick his saddle or a piece of his saddle in Gobber's Forge while Ashford sees him. There's a little bit. There's not music there until they're about to leave. So that's actually a pretty good balance there. Now the second movie, I kind of get more of they use a little bit more music. Not that it detracts from the movie necessarily, but it does leave like some parts where I'd prefer there to be silence or just like some background noise or something. But the soundtrack is still there. And you still have your elements. Now the third movie, of which I've only seen 2 times, that actually saves the main theme for the very end. Which I thought that was actually pretty interesting. I didn't realize it till my second viewing. But that one is, I'd almost say it's in between 1 and 2 with the terms of using the music and not using the music. And I don't have an opinion on it yet because I've only seen it twice, so I really don't know if it detracts from the movie experience or not. It doesn't from the second one, so it shouldn't from the third. But I think that when it comes from obviously the soundtrack stuff, you probably get the best mix from the first movie, in my opinion. But we'll see what everybody else says.
Well, you can now jump ahead to what's your favorite one.
I didn't say what's my favorite one. I was about to, but I didn't.
You implied it.
Mm-hmm.
But okay.
Well, that's all for this episode of the Berkcast then.
No, it's not. We still have some way to go. So, Wolf, what do you have to add? How much does the soundtrack affect you when you watch the movie?
It's simply put, right, like, music in visual media is, I would say, the lifeline to your audience, right? Like, it's how music is how you get across to your audience how they should feel. Movies, television shows, video games, like, music is a very good, at the very least, baseline of this is how I want you to feel in this scene. If I want you to feel anxious, I'm going to play something fast. If I want you to feel more somber, more sad, I'm going to play something slow. Things of that nature, right?
Mhm.
For me, sometimes it's not something I take a huge thought into. It sometimes does stay in the back of my mind more than something like, oh, I've noticed this. I've noticed what you've done with this. I've started to take a more, I would say, you um, word escapes me.
Conscious
Uh,
approach?
yes, more conscious approach to like noticing the music and how it makes me feel within a certain scene or within a game or within a television show. Like I notice the music a bit more readily and how it makes me feel within that particular scene. Within that particular scene. So for me, like the first movie, I think the music stood out quite a bit more. And maybe that's helped because I've listened to the soundtrack on its own. With the second film and the third film, I've not watched the third film enough yet, I don't feel, compared to the first and second. And two, I've definitely not listened to the soundtrack for the second or third film as much as I have for the first. Maybe that says something. I don't want to say it does, but it might. I guess it depends on who you talk to. But I definitely feel like this first film, the soundtrack definitely, helps define the scene a lot more. In the second and third films, I'm a little bit kind of on the fence still get a bit. Like there's definitely tracks that from the second film stand out in my mind that I can remember, right? But I don't feel like there's as many.
It's an interesting discussion point. I do like that bringing up because, as you pointed out, soundtracks in film have a purpose. It's not
Hmm.
to be standalone music, it's to accompany the visuals and provide more information on how to feel about the scenes. And so, sometimes whether or not people notice the soundtrack isn't always a good or bad thing so long as the soundtrack is amplifying your experience of the movie.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's another thing that I think what makes the soundtrack of the movies actually work for people is that the scenes, even without the soundtrack, are good scenes. So add to that a great soundtrack and all this, and that that helps you feel more for a scene, or make the experience better, and and from there everybody can just fall in love with the soundtrack. And I think that's what's happened here, because for example, John Paul composed another movie in 2014 called Ryu 2. I remember nothing about this movie. So, it doesn't matter how good he did in that movie. I don't remember. I just have no idea what any of the tracks sound like, even though I've seen the movie, sadly. But and I think half of it just comes up from the fact that the movie is not memorable, but the Haunted and Dragon movies are memorable. So it's easier to connect a scene to a music track to a scene that you recall enjoying. That's one. And but another thing that really I found special about the soundtracks is that this is the first time I actually listened to a movie soundtrack, and not musicals, because musicals I can listen to, songs with lyrics and everything, like the Disney musicals, for example. But this was the first time I actually took the time to sit down and listen to the sound, to just the tracks, no lyrics, no nothing, just the tracks that accompany the movie. How to Train Your Dragon was the first movie I've ever done this with. So I think it means something.
I do. I think that so I have an interesting opinion as far as original soundtracks go in movies. I tend not to care for them because they are so reliant on the visuals. And also there's been this trend in specifically the last 10 to 15 years that I've noticed in lots of contemporary movie scores is that they are so focused on the visuals that they're basically what's called incidental music, which is less melody, well, less memorable melody oriented with themes and so forth, and more based upon conveying emotions, which is fair and fine, but that means that you're not really going to have as much enjoyment of the soundtrack if you sit and listen to it on its own, because there's not as much substance without the visuals. And one of the things that makes How to Train Your Dragon unique is that the music, especially in the first and the second soundtracks, is that the music stands just as good on its own as it does with the accompanying visuals. And part of that is that there's actually a very complex of musical theme. So, unlike having one tune for a whole movie, or a sort of half memorable tune, is that there's a lot of very easy, catchy earworms that happen throughout the How to Train Your soundtracks that people can connect to and remember to, which is sort of different than what you get in a lot of movies nowadays. If that makes sense.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I just want to point out that you said How to Train Your soundtracks.
Oh, did I really? That's amazing. I didn't even notice.
I'm just imagining John Paul doing the hand thing to a giant record player.
All right, How to Train Your soundtracks. That's going to be the fourth movie. It's coming out in 2023. Be ready, you guys.
Yeah, there you go.
John Powell will be riding a double bass.
You know how he was actually interviewed for the third movie. Yeah, now he's going to be the main star. But okay,
Silence,
so now
the most elusive of sounds. Incapacitainment.
Amazing.
With that being said, so we talked about the soundtracks, why we think they're so special, why we love them. But I think the answer is going to be clear for most of us. But what is your favorite soundtrack of the franchise? And you obviously need to tell me one.
Don't all
Everybody
go at once.
going at once here. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting because I know what most of the people's answer is going to be. So I'm just waiting to hear it before I share probably my controversial opinion.
I am going to have a different opinion than you might expect, given the majority of what people vote for. So
I'll be the one who's very obvious. Mine's definitely the first one.
I knew it.
Wow.
Like it's not exactly a surprise there, but yeah, mine will probably definitely be the first one more than the second or third one. That could change in the future as I listen to them more and get more acquainted with both of them, and especially the third film, right? That could definitely change, but as of now, I'd say, yeah, probably would still lean more towards the first one.
Mm-hmm. Let's see if Rush is going to be as obvious as Wolf.
Nope, I'm not. Number 0. Actually, I go for the second movie for one reason and one reason only. So I did say earlier that the second movie was sort of derivative in elements of the soundtrack, but there was technically two. There was definitely one that always stood out to me, and I said it before the pre-show. Stoic's death music.
Yes, I knew it.
So good.
With that was definitely.
I was hoping you'd say it for the joke, but still,
no,
it's a
that's
good track.
Definitely the best. I mean, I like the upbeat, ending music of How to Train Your Dragon 1 with the bagpipes, but the actual emotional use of the bagpipes, dude, that shit hit different. Anyway, enough memes for today. Realistically, yes, that and that alone is what puts it above number 1 for me. And I wish I could say 3 had anything for me, but like I said, I've only seen it twice, unfortunately. So, hey, now that my fiance's gone off, I can watch it every day.
As you heard it first here, folks, Rush's fiance forces him to not watch movies.
I'm not saying she doesn't. Anyway.
Before this gets very dark, Haddock, you said you are going to have a different choice than what people expect. With that said,
So, well, it's not too unexpected. It is the second soundtrack is my favorite. I will champion the first. I will not champion the third, and we can get into that later. But one thing to point out is that each soundtrack has a very different vibe to it. So the first soundtrack is clear, crisp, it's raw, gritty, and bombastic, which is much like the animation style and tone of the first soundtrack. The second soundtrack adds a little bit more nuance, mixed timbral palettes in the instruments, more explorative colors, and maturity, especially maturity to its instrumentation. And that contains a lot of interesting nuance, and that's why I drive specifically to the second. The third soundtrack, I sort of feel like it's this fairy tale-esque sort of feel to it. So it's sort of fluid and it's got this smooth sense, which it does work with the very beautiful, smooth, light-oriented visuals of the Hidden World. So I think that lots of what people gravitate to in the soundtrack is going to be based upon some of their own aesthetic preferences. Obviously, the first soundtrack is the referring point to all of us because that's the one where we first hear a lot of the themes. But based upon your own ear, you're going to be hearing something different for each of the different soundtracks. And so for me, the maturity of the second soundtrack blows me away. I feel like there's some really unique choices, some very nuanced choices and flavors in how the score is orchestrated that makes it stand out. And I can talk more about this later, but just gonna say that there's some really cool things that happen there that don't happen quite as much in the first and the third that draw me as a music composer. Anyway.
A question I would like to throw out to you: if you had to describe each of the three tracks with one word, what would you pick for each of them?
Oh, I hate you. Okay, first soundtrack is, I would say, bombastic. I think that's a really good word for it because it gets that, that high energy, but it's also, that punch to it. The second one, I'm gonna say mature, and then the third one, I would say, I guess I'll go back to sort of fairy tale for the third one.
I would have picked adventurous for the second one personally. Like, that's the thing that kind of hits me the most when I listen to it, I feel. And from what I do remember of hearing of it, is like it takes on a more adventurous tone to it.
And it definitely, adventurous, and I think it has a lot more musical elements that we associate with a fantasy genre in it. Does that sort of tie into your sort of feel of adventurous?
It does. It does.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think you chose a good word for the first one, bombastic. Like I said, with the ending of like the first one, how it's all upbeat, that actually, like, you just remind me that there's really no sad or slow parts where they use music. Anytime where it's a slow, they actually don't use music, and that's what I kind of like about the first movie in terms of just the movie experience. But in terms of music, there's no sad, slow, emotional parts that you need the hard hitting stuff for.
The one exception I would say is with Where's Hiccup, but you're right that there's a lot of time that they choose silence to let the hard moments hit home, which is a very good sound editing choice.
So, HC, your controversial opinion.
Hidden World.
Really?
Yeah, okay. Now, before anybody gets their pitchforks and everything, hear me out.
Oh, it's too late.
Too late. I'm already sharpening my pitchfork. You better run.
Well, I said before you get your pitchforks out, so the fact that you are, you didn't get it out yet, you're just sharpening it. So, hold on, don't go the extra mile and hear me out. The one thing I like about the soundtrack specifically is that, don't get me wrong, the first two soundtracks have their variety. There are the biggest, there are the big tracks, there are the quieter tracks, there are the kind of the epic tracks. But I think Hidden World has the most variety in its tracks. Like, this is the one where I really feel like no track is really like another one in the soundtrack. Like, for example, you like, can somebody, not Haddock because music expert, but when you but when you listen to like into This Is Berk and Test Drive, you can, yeah, both of the tracks are different, but at the same time you can kind of hear the same the same instruments there, the same composition in a sense, if it makes any sense. But in the Hidden World, there are actually tracks that I listened to the track where when in Grimmel's first scene, and I listened to Third Date. Those two are nothing like the other, and then when you get to the Hidden World scene, again, this doesn't sound like anything from before. So I just like the variety in it compared to the other two. Again, the other two are great and have variety as well. Don't get me wrong, but I felt the most variety came from the Hidden World soundtrack.
That's a really fascinating perspective, and honestly, I love the fact that in this small group of people, we have people talking about all three different soundtracks as their favorite. So we get all of those perspectives. For me, unity is a very important factor in a music soundtrack, is because having a similar palette throughout the entire thing helps get that sense of you're watching the same movie. Obviously, you need variation. Otherwise, you're not doing your job as a composer, getting all the moods and emotions and expressivity out. But if you have one track sounding disjointed from another, it can throw audiences out of the movie because there's not this sense of uniformity. So I thought that was a really interesting comment on that, because I approach it from the opposite side.
Yeah, but I get what you mean. But at the same time, when I say there's variety, it's not that all of them are really different in each other in terms of composition or anything. It's just that when I listen to one, I have a different feeling than I listen to that one. Like both can fit different situations. Like for example, I can watch something funny and Third Date would fit better with it. But then again, like when I'm walking out of the house tired or something, then the Hidden World track wouldn't necessarily fit. So again, I like that variety, but still keeping it all together.
Right.
And on that note, I do want to kind of shout out all of the people from the Valhalla server I met in Berlin, because they pretty much put that soundtrack on repeat, and now it's engraved into my mind and I will never forget anything about it. So the people there who are listening to this, thank you. Moving on. So we talked about our favorite soundtracks of the three, but what is your favorite specific track from each of the three soundtracks?
Do we want to go movie by movie?
Like, what is your favorite track from the? Sorry,
No.
somebody was speeding up here, and I couldn't hear myself for a second. So, favorite track from the first movie, favorite track from the second movie, favorite track from the third movie.
What I meant is, do we want to talk about the movie like the first movie altogether first, and then go on to the second movie, rather than just have one person listing off 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, let's do that. So
All right.
With that said, favorite track from the first movie. The two people who've been doing this with me for 3 years probably know what mine is, so I'm not going to even hide that. It's Test Drive, obviously.
I mean, I haven't heard your reasoning why for it, so.
Because let's all mention the picks first, and then we'll explain if it's okay with you.
All right.
Let's see. Mine from the first one. That's a good question. Of which hold on a second. Okay. Now that that's taken care of. I
realized what you did just now. I thought it was you when I wasn't
It is
entirely
me.
sure.
It is me. The entire time.
No offense, HC. You can still hear us, but you're moving your mic a lot.
Your mic is doing something that's making noise, so I've been muting you just because you can't hear it, so you don't know what's going on. He did notice because he unmuted himself earlier. Anyway, my favorite track, I'd have to say, it's really tough. I do like the ending theme the best, just in terms of the overall. But I mean, that's the main theme anyway. So, geez, there's one part I can't remember what it's called. But I think I guess it's after test drive, like when they're flying into the nest for the first time. I think. God, what is that called? I need to look at all these track names.
Dragon's Den, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that one. I like that one.
I think that's what it is.
Because
Yeah.
you get the horns coming in, and it's like a hard stop from the romantic flight, which is also good because I'm a texture trash. But anyway, the Dragon's Den, like, it's a huge shift, and it's really, really powerful. And I always like just the horns in kind of a heavy part. I can link you to a favorite song of mine. Anyway, that's my part.
Okay, Wolf, go.
Oh, for me, I think it's really close between which one is it? I'm looking at the list to make sure I got the name right. Forbidden Friendship, I love that piano at the beginning. Like, that always sticks out of my mind as just a great thing. But I think my favorite would probably go to This Is Berk. Mostly because I'm just a huge brass fan, and I love that intro. It's very kind of a little bit whimsical, but also, again, like Haddock said, it's very bombastic. Like, it starts out very slow, very small, and then really just builds into, this is Berk. Like, this is what you can expect from this place. I think it sets the mood and the tone extremely well for what it is and what it does. So
You just stole my answer.
Oh.
No, like, that's wonderful, because I was thinking exactly the same thing about This Is Berk. This is how we set the tone for the entire movie. This is our introduction to Berk, obviously. And so there's something extremely iconic about the way that it begins and opens up and develops. And we really put such a strong punch musical impression first at the very beginning. We know that this was a very hard scene for all of the creators to work on. It was a very long introductory scene that they had to work on, and yet, all that came together writing wise, and the music was able to match every second of it. And so it's got so much energy, so much power. There's not a second that I cannot enjoy on This Is Berk. Other favorites, I mean, honestly, half of the soundtrack is the same part to me, and I listened to all of them, and I could not decide between Test Drive or Forbidden Friendship or Astrid Goes for a Spin or other pieces like that.
So just to explain my pick, Test Drive is kind of the same reason I like the scene in general. I am the scene in itself like has everything in it. I talked about this before. I just loved it. I love this scene, like the way it's paced, the way in terms of what's going on in it, and how Hiccup and Toothless both learn and eventually manage to work together. And the sound, the track itself also kind of has this. It starts off peaceful, with them flying around, and then it gets a bit goofy when Hiccup messes up and makes Toothless fly into the rocks. Then when the safety rope disconnects and they fall down to the ocean, you hear the intensity, you hear the pressure, and then when eventually they manage to reunite and navigate through the rocks, you get that triumphant moment that yes. This is important here. This is big for this character that has been a screw up his entire life, and he manages to do that. It's like, it's so good. And I think there's a good reason why this is also, in a sense, what people will confirm would call the sort of the main anthem of this franchise. This is because this is the one track that kind of keeps coming back in the future soundtracks, even in the show a bit. So yeah, I just like how significant it is, and it's also a good track on its own. It's great. Yeah, agreement. Moving on.
Rush.
What?
He said it.
Like, why do you like the track you like, or did you already explain? I guess you already explained that.
I
Somewhere.
did. I'm with you in the same boat of the brass.
Yeah. So moving on to How to Train Your Dragon 2. Who wants to start? Hopefully none of you will steal mine.
Then go first. That way no one can steal it.
Modern problems require modern solutions.
I will find out what you're doing. You're telling me to go first because then if I'll steal something from you, you're going to say, "Oh yeah, HC went first, so he stole it." So you know what? No, you go first. I don't care.
No, I'm telling you go first because I'm still thinking.
Oh.
I have my answer prepared.
How'd it go?
Yeah, but then you're gonna steal it
Okay.
from HC. Oh no. You're gonna
All right,
steal
I
it.
will solve this dispute. I will save both of your butts. All right, so favorite one is Dragon Racing. Holy crap. I can, and I already have talked extensively about this. I have an analysis post. What's it called? It's called Analyzing Dragon Racing as Art Music. And what I love so much about this particular piece is, as I was talking about earlier, is lots of movie soundtracks are very visuals reliant to the point that the music doesn't stand up as well structurally on its own. But Dragon Racing both gets very nuanced musical cues aligning with the visuals, and it is an extremely well composed piece on its own. What I love about it is that it's basically a suite of all the themes of the first movie, but it's rearranged into very new orchestration. It's to point out that all the times that the different themes pop up, they're relevant to the visuals on screen. So, for instance, Astrid's theme is introduced when Astrid is, grabbing the sheep from the twins and so forth. So it's got all of the themes in a suite playing through again, but visually aligning with what's on screen. But it's also a really cool structure. So it's sort of a rondo-like form. And for people who aren't as familiar with music terms, a rondo is a traditional form where you basically have an A theme, and then you'll have a B section, and then you'll go back to that A theme, and then you go to a C section, and you'll keep on going back to that A theme repeatedly while alternating with other sections. So that main theme that HC was talking about before, dun da da dun da 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 da, that's our A theme. And then we switch to the other themes and go back to that A theme. And it's all composed in this wonderful musical structure. The climax hits at the proportionally right point, and the orchestration is complex and beautifully done. I want to talk sometime about the musical instrument choices in the How to Train Your Dragon soundtracks, because there's some unique instrumentation in there that other movies don't get, and which I think Dragon Racing does a really good job showcasing. So, for instance, there's an Ilian pipe solo that just makes me scream every single time I hear it. I'm trying not to rave about this track forever. I could keep on going forever and ever. Let's just go to my blog, try to find...
I was about to say...
Just go to my blog if you want to know more.
I think I read that at one point. Yeah, I think I read... It sounded familiar.
Yes, yeah. It's an old analysis, but I still hold by it.
Well, Raj, do you have anything to say, or do you want me to go first?
I don't want you to take mine. I'm sorry. Anyway. So, if you didn't get it from my the beginning of the episode, my favorite is Stoic Ship.
Yeah, we figured it out. I
And why did you
want to
need me to
say
go?
Demet stole mine, but this joke is not in its place. So yeah, but Stoic's ship
Thanks, HC.
stuck to one.
So as I said, it's a stark contrast to the rest of the movie. We do get most of the movie has been about upbeat use of the bagpipes, and I also hit my mic there. I also like the use of the choir, the singing, kind of in the background. Gosh, I know they've done it before, but I just can't remember where. But I have to say, like, that altogether is, I think, a just good combination of. I can't find the words.
Join the club.
Yeah, I know what I like, and I know why I like it. I just can't find the words. I like music. I just don't know how to describe it. It's bombastic now. It's very tame, I'd say. It's just not what you'd expect. Of course, I mean, with the death scene, yeah, you'd expect sad music, but I just think that for a death scene with music, it's above the rest.
Yeah, because there's also something a bit grand in it. It's not just sad. There's another dimension to it.
Yeah, one of the things I think about it is it's sort of this resigned emotion in there. Is there sad elements? It's sort of reflective, nostalgic as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a good soundtrack. You're right. The emotions are complex.
Well, to go to my favorite, which has a lot of emotion in it. Toothless Found. Yes! That's my favorite. That's my favorite from the second movie because again, for one, it's kind of a reprise of an early old Toothless Last, and there's this kind of sad moment where Hiccup is trying to get Toothless back into his senses, and displaced throughout the entirety of it. And in the original Toothless Last, it's kind of cut in at some point, but Toothless Found actually then he keeps getting bigger and bigger once Hiccup manages to break the Bewildered Beast's control over Toothless. And when Toothless throws Drago off of his back, you feel that victory. You feel that yes. So just thinking about it, I'm getting. I love the scene. But again, it's also but then it also kind of continues throughout the track that when Hiccup says, "Let's try this one more time," and we get to the battle. You hear the horns going like announcing an actual fight that's about to take place. And when Hiccup and Toothless like fly by Drago, and then Drago notices that Hiccup is not on Toothless's back. The music actually kind of has a taunting vibe to it that it goes like. I can't sing, but
wow, it's like I was there.
I hate you too, but anyway, the fact that there's this small taunting moment there, like, why is that there outside of taunting Drago who can't hear this? I don't know, but it's there and it's magnificent. And then it kind of goes back to that dreary feeling when Hiccup sees he's about to run into the Bewildered tail, and when Toothless flies in to save him, and it's like there's this moment of quiet where you're not quite sure if they'll make it or not, but then they do, and they kind of bring Test Drive a bit for just a bit. Again, it just fits with the scene perfectly, and it's one of those tracks that like. Whatever mood I'm in, just put that soundtrack on, I'm better, like immediately. Such a great track.
Yeah, I love that one too. I also have very big connections to it because it was the first piece I ever heard from the How to Train Your Dragon 2 soundtrack before the movie release. And so that was my first impression, and when I was hearing like the subtleties of the instrumentation, I just completely fell in love and was just in awe, and I had to listen to it again and again.
I'm still listening to it again and again, 5 years later. And so, Wolf, I didn't steal yours. Let's see what you got.
No, but Rush did.
Oh, the
no,
tables have turned.
Yeah, like definitely Stoic Ship is one that stands out for me as well from the second soundtrack. Like that's the one that I can always go back to and remember like how it plays out. Like I still haven't forgot it. But if I have to pick something else that I actually really enjoy from the second soundtrack that I do remember, it's if I'm not mistaken, the name of it is Meet Drago, and I really enjoy the maybe not the full track, but especially the beginning of that track. How it starts off very slow, very small, and then you start in like it's very almost quiet, I guess you would say, right? Like it's very slow, it's very small, it's very quiet. There's not a lot to it when you first meet Drago, and you listen to this track and you hear it, and it's almost kind of, in a way, it's very different to what Drago looks like and who he is and how very standout he is, I guess you'd say, in terms of what he looks like and how he sounds compared to everyone else in the film.
Okay.
And to me, I like this track again because it starts off that way, and then it starts to add in the strings, and you get that little bit of creepy vibe, and then all of a sudden you get this very here comes in the brass, and it takes on that more kind of bombastic tone as well. And it's like, okay, this is a guy who leads an army now. Like you can actually kind of hear that in the track. Like this is, the leader of an armada, of an army, and you kind of get that choir in the background as well. I do love how that track kind of goes through all of that, and then you also get kind of the up and the down in this track as well, from going very high, very a lot going on, and then once again we go back to this small, subtle stuff. There's not a lot of instruments there. There's not a lot going on there, but it still gets the feeling across of kind of who he is and what he's about, I feel. So this one definitely stands out somewhat for me as well. Also, I do have to make at least a slight mention to Together We Map the World. The beginning of that one also. Love the beginning of that one.
Okay. Well, 2 down, 1 left. What is your favorite track from the Hidden World?
Well, apparently I already stole somebody, so I'm not going first again.
You didn't, though.
I'm not going second again. Oh, I thought that's why you meant you didn't know.
Haddock, what do you got?
All right.
All right, I'll be
okay,
first.
yeah. I went first on the second film, but I'll go again. All right. So it's specifically the first half, but whatever. It's the first half of When There Were Dragons, and that's the most standout for me. And going back to the composer brain, is the orchestration on that is exquisite. The mood of that is enchanting. Just the harps and the choral stuff. The choral theme especially sounds very Whitaker, and I know part of that is the bias that I know that Eric Whitaker is conducting it, and it is with his choir. But man, there's just this wonderful vibe to the beginning of that, and then as it progresses and goes into I don't have the words exactly for it because I'm going first, but yeah, just have to say it's so beautifully done, so beautifully remarkable. I'm saying the first half because the second half, I'm sorry everyone, the second half disappoints me because it's a rehash of the stuff from the first movie, and I'm like, really? But the first half I will listen to all day.
So maybe John Powell did take a vacation.
I have some opinions and thoughts about what happened with the Hidden World soundtrack. If you ever want me to go into that,
Tumblr's rant.
There will eventually be a Tumblr rant. When
Nice.
the Hidden World came out, everyone asked me for an analysis of the music soundtrack, and guess who still hasn't posted that?
It's okay.
Okay, we'll see back then, whenever you post that. So, moving on. You know what? I'm going to take a risk and go now because I don't think anybody will choose that. And of course, now that I say that, there's also decide to choose it, but here we go. As long as he's safe, that's my favorite.
Why?
Okay, now that I know that I didn't steal anybody's pick, let me explain.
You stole it.
Yeah,
Darn
of
you.
course. Yeah, of course, Wolf. Of
I mean,
course.
boiling in silent rage.
Mhm. Okay, but basically, as long as I say, first of all, I like I like how the name kinda has a meaning in two parts of the track. Like there's the first part. There's one part where Hiccup, Hiccup lets go of the Light Fury and sacrifices himself, so that the Light Fury could save Toothless. That's one, and then the second one is that he lets Toothless go because one of the reasons is that it's for his safety. He also tells them, I was so busy thinking about fighting for what I wanted and didn't realize what you needed. Time to look after yourselves. So I like the double meaning of the title first of all. Now the second thing I like, again, kind of how this track itself can kind of shift as it goes along, because it starts kind of big and bombastic when it's Hiccup and Toothless going out of the camouflage, and Hiccup jumping off of Toothless to fight Grimmel head on. There's this big bombastic thing, and then when Toothless gets hit with a dart, it becomes a bit more suspenseful, and it gets more and more suspenseful, and even when Toothless lets go of the Light Fury and we think he's going to die. And then there's also that big moment where you're not sure if the Light Fury is going to catch Toothless, but she does, and then they're safe. And then it kind of goes to this quiet, slow-mo moment where you think these are the last moments of Hiccup before it dies with Grimmel. But then it goes completely quiet when the Light Fury comes back, and when she catches them again, it comes back to that big test drive moment, which personally gives me a lot of feels time I watch this moment. It's a very good moment. But then you have the big goodbye scene, which is sad and is impactful, and the music really sells it, because again, it's all of a sudden it slows down. You think about how this track begins and how it ends. It's really different, and again I admire that, and also it's impactful. So 2 for 2. What else can you add?
Nothing, since it wasn't my choice.
G. So what is your choice?
Oh, wow. My turn. The Hidden World.
Yeah, well, that's a good one.
I think this one, for me, is my favorite because it combines... I know Haddock was saying about how they're all for the visuals, but I think this one really, in my opinion... Now, I could be completely wrong here. Combines the visuals and the soundtrack very well. If I see just the visuals, like, okay, those are nice. But if I get the visuals and the soundtrack, I've gotten goosebumps both times when seeing that scene when they first fly in with the Hidden World. And so that's enough for me to top it off there. So
Absolutely. And to clarify, what I mean is that the music helps make the visuals more powerful and makes the emotions more powerful. So I would agree completely with what you said about...
Yeah, I was saying that I agree they have those, but this one is not one of those. This is definitely the better of those, or the better implementation of music for aiding visuals.
Ah, okay, I get it. I get you now.
Nice. Wolf?
For me, I think I'd have to go with New Tale. I kind of love the more whimsical nature of this one, right? I love how it builds into itself, and I love how it continues to keep that very whimsical, very fantasy, theme throughout its entire track. And this is one that I can kind of listen to separate from everything and still enjoy a lot. And I think that's kind of the thing that's you'll find that's very common with me is I like the track more if I can listen to it separately. Maybe that's a terrible way to do things or to go about it, but I do end up enjoying tracks a bit more from whatever they're from if I can listen to them separately without the scene and find it very enjoyable. Like I'll end up enjoying the track a lot more. Nunu Tail definitely tends to fit that a lot for me personally from the third movie. I will also, point out I enjoy especially the first half of "With Love Comes a Great Waterfall." That track, I love the first half of that one a lot, but I do enjoy the build up there. I think it builds into itself really well, and the build up is also really enjoyable too, and it's good. Me like good sound.
Me like good sound. There you go. We found the catchphrase.
Stellar analysis from Wolf.
That is the best sentence that we have had the entire time. Everybody else can go home. We have that
Yeah,
on
like-
word
I
now.
think I just found the
Like-
title of this
Like,
video.
The
Berkcast. We like good
you
sound.
Like you see the reviews for Whiplash, amazing, gratifying. I like good sound, Wolf.
No, it has to be me
Me
like,
like
good,
good
sound.
sound.
Yeah.
You have to do it. You have to get the quote right. You can have that one, John Powell, and everyone else who worked on the soundtrack.
Yeah, I like good sound. Okay. Well, so we talked about all the tracks from each of the soundtracks. So let me ask you, do you have any special memories connecting you to one of the tracks? Like, is there a track that you have a specific experience with?
Nope.
Yes.
Okay, like you got it.
I mean, there's lots of tracks that I could pull out and talk about different memories. I remember the first time I was into How to Train Your Dragon theater, watching it, and I was listening to Forbidden Friendship. I sort of gasped and whispered to my friends aloud, "The flute!" when I heard the flute, because I liked the cue so much. Because already composing, already loving music at that time back in high school. I mentioned the first time I listened to Toothless Found, just absolutely falling in love with the subtleties of the different instrumentations and the. I don't need to go into that. And then another one is, I mean, like many people, I have some memories with For the Dancing and the Dreaming. There's one time a friend and I were doing a Hickstrid cosplay photo shoot, and so we had to make a video of us singing it together. So I've got, good memories with that as well. Lots of other tracks as well, but just little memories like that. Nothing too big, but when I listen to the tracks, I'll remember those sorts of things.
Yeah. Okay, so aside from watching the movie theaters and getting to experience the thing and the thing on big screen and stuff, there's one thing that kind of surprised me. That one thing I noticed in the news is that throughout throughout news reports or something, they would usually use tracks from other stuff, movies, shows, whatever. You can have like a news report about, I don't know, somebody who is going to the Olympics to represent us or something, and then you hear like an instrumental of Firefly of the Firefly team or something. So there was one report, I don't remember what it's about, but I'm like, this track sounds familiar, and I'm trying to, and like a few seconds later, I'm like, wait a minute, that's Forbidden Friendship. What is this doing here? And the one thing I do remember is that this report had nothing to do with either friendships or forbiddenness. So I don't know why they chose it, but it was cool.
It's always weird to encounter soundtracks that in the wild, unconnected to what they're used for.
Yeah, in the wild specifically. Because, in the wild you don't have any electricity, so hearing something there means there's another person. That's kind of... But because I do have a question, I forgot to ask this in the script, but we can improvise this. Do you have a favorite track from the lyrical song? You know, Sticks and Stones. Um, man, I actually forgot that. Oh my god. How you
Where
know
No One Goes, and I think
where
the
no
third
one goes? Yeah,
Does the third
it's
one have?
Together from Afar.
Yeah.
I think we're
So do you,
forgetting the best lyrical songs out there from Race to the Edge when they're singing to the baby.
you oh
That
yeah,
song.
right. Okay, sure, that could be it.
Well, if that's the case, then Snotlout's song was my favorite.
Well, I think from the one in the movies, I'll be probably a bit unpredictable and say Sticks and Stones is not terrible, but it's not my personal favorite. Like I need to be in some sort of a mood in order to listen to it. Where No One Goes, I really like, but I think Together from Afar is the one that really hits me in a sense. Like because when I think about it, I come the ending credits and everything. But I don't know. It just I like in terms of lyrics, I like this one the most personally.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have anything to add?
No. There you go.
Okay, so no
Yeah,
love to the
I'm
lyrical themes.
I'm kind of in the same way. I think Where No One Goes probably is the one that would stand out to me the most too. So like you kind of already taken my answer, I suppose you could say.
Angry. How dare you, HC? You have
How dare
stolen.
I? Haddock, do you have any favorite lyrical theme?
So I have the controversial opinion of I don't. Jonesy's music isn't my aesthetic, so I don't care for any of them. I apologize to everyone in advance, but Where No One Goes is the one that I will tolerate, so I guess that's my favorite. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah. Well, the genre of music is not my favorite genre as well. I honestly connect with them more because they're related to a franchise I like. Honestly, that's the main reason.
That's fair.
Well, on that note, moving on to probably the final part of this. Is there a track you don't like?
I've got an
No.
answer, and yes, but I'll wait for other people to respond first.
A track that I don't like, my least favorite one, from anything or just you just want to do each movie?
From anything.
If we're doing from anything, everything from How to Train Your Dragon 3.
Mm-hmm.
No. Not really, I don't think there's anything that stands out as yeah, this is bad. I'm not fond. No, I don't want to say bad, but I'm not fond of. I don't think there's anything that inherently stands out to my mind of. Yeah, this one, not my thing. If you pushed me, I might say like, while again, I think the lyric tracks are good. Those are probably the thing that stands out as I'm not as fond of personally, right? Like I would take the instrumental stuff over lyric stuff, but that's just a me thing in general. Though I'm more instrumental than lyrics more often than not. So there's my answer. There you go.
Okay. Rush, you go. I just need to
Again,
quickly set.
not saying the lyric tracks are bad. Just being clear with that. Before people get angry. Potentially, because I know a lot of people like Jonesy.
Well, I guess the
Not-
Berkcast just got canceled. Thanks, Wolf.
Mm. You're welcome.
As
This
if
is
any
the
of our
worst
worst
Berkcast.
episodes ever did do that
let's
already, but whatever.
Let's assume that we have more of a say on
I-
it, but
Out of everything I've said on the Berkcast in the past, this is the thing that gets us canceled. Yeah, sure.
Hmm.
not fish legs and meat log marrying each other. No, this is where the line is drawn, people.
People love Jonesy.
Well, I don't hate him. It's just this specific genre is not my thing. If anything, I like his songs better than most of the genre. So, But in terms of least favorite tracks, I guess I'll have to Sticks and Stone. I don't know. It's just the one that feels out of context from everything.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Rush.
I was wondering if you noticed that because you totally went to me and then AC just goes, but no, I don't have any that I absolutely hate. I'm trying to think, it's like, I mean, I guess the general feeling is, yeah, I won't listen to the Jonesy stuff like on my own. I'm more likely to listen to the regular soundtrack than any of the after stuff. Yeah, I don't think I have anything that I wouldn't listen to from the regular soundtrack. So I can't say. And I really have no specific track that I don't like, nor do I have a least favorite one.
Mm-hmm. Well, anything to add before we close? Like whatever
Well,
to add
we
about
didn't
the
get
soundtracks?
Haddock's answer, if I'm not mistaken.
I'll be
Um,
the negative person. I'll end it on a negative note. Sad day. Okay.
I think she said she doesn't like any of the
Third.
any of the lyrical ones. So
So there's that, but I was actually thinking about the actual orchestration versions. There is one that I wouldn't say I have negative feelings on, but I'm sort of like, really? Did you have to? So that's Armada Battle in the Hidden World. And the reason for that is it reuses significant amounts of music from How to Train Your Dragon 2's Battle of the Bewilderbeast. And that is a pet peeve of mine, is when you completely reuse a track in a different context. Compose something new. Seriously, guys, just compose something new.
yeah,
Seriously.
compose something new.
Like,
How
you
dare
know-
you?
no, because the reason is you composed that piece in Battle of the Bewilderbeast for a Bewilderbeast. Wow. For a very specific context, for a very specific material, and once you reuse that, you take away the meaning from both times that the music happens. It's just generic action music as versus music that's supposed to have meaning with what the visuals are on screen. So that's why I really, really, really don't like when that happens. And yeah, I just don't have respect for when you reuse note for note stuff, especially that much. And I have some suspicions about why that sort of thing happened in the Hidden World soundtracks. I don't need to get into that, but basically that's why Armada Battle isn't my thing. It's not that it's a bad track, because of course I enjoy Battle of the Bewilderbeast in How to Train Your Dragon 2. It's just, again, sentiment, compose something new, guys. So, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, can kind of give that criticism too sometimes. It just didn't bother me in this case.
What you're saying is you dislike it because they disrespected Omelet's death.
Yes.
Don't ever talk to me or my omelet again.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
Speaking of
exactly
which, I need
why
to make
I feel
breakfast,
so
and that's what I'm gonna
particularly
do then.
offended.
Respect the omelet.
All the omelet. Omelet left
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah, but you know something, on that note, when Omelette dies, there is no music. How could they make this part, It's Omelette. He deserves a respectable anthem, guys. I mean, come on.
They had to cut out Onlit ship from
Oh no.
Where's that hidden scene? It was gonna be, 6 minutes long of us, just crying.
How do you
No,
live up
it's
to One
like,
Dragon
we should
so
start-
great?
We should start, guys. We should start a petition to, release Omelette's ship. I mean, come on.
I mean, it's to be fair, it's just the cracking of eggs looped over and over again, or the cracking of an egg looped over and over again.
But see, that's true avant-garde creativity right there. An absolute masterpiece of artistic expression.
This is true.
Okay. Anything else about this? Just to make sure we're not forgetting anything?
Oh, I have 300 more thoughts, but we don't need to get into all 300 of them.
Rush, no. Just no.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
no.
Okay,
but
what
Ha-
Oh,
are we
sorry, I
going
put it in the
Haddock-
wrong. I put it in the wrong channel. There we
Haddock
go.
can see this because
And they can see
it's
it
on
now.
Yep.
Yeah. So to those who don't know, Rush just posted on our server the infamous drug commercial of the egg being cracked on, and it says, "This is your brain. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs."
And it's an egg sizzling. That's Omelette's death track. Omelette wasn't a very good dragon. He went to hell, and that's just what we keep hearing.
Well,
I don't
can
think I'm
say
invited back. I'm sorry.
I can say I expected that direction.
So
when we
disrespectful to Omelette.
Next
Forgive
week
me,
on
Omelette, for
Berkcast,
I have
talking about the
sinned.
dragon afterlife.
Next week on Berkcast,
Well-
talking about where Rush went.
I
Where's
mean, we
Rush?
would feed you to Omelette, but unfortunately he's dead, so we can't do that.
Well, we can feed him to Omelette's successor in the role.
He doesn't have one. That's the problem.
Ooh.
Poor Omelette.
He does. Dragos Bewilderbeast.
That doesn't count.
succeeded
He
him.
killed Omelette. He's even worse.
So toothless. You know what?
Why do the good die young?
Mm.
And on that
Going
note-
majorly off topic.
So before we lose minds completely, this was all for this episode of the Berkcast. We hope you enjoyed. What is your favorite How to Train Dragon soundtrack, and what is your favorite track in the franchise? You can tell us all about that in the comment section below, on our Tumblr, where we are known as Berkcast Team, on our Twitter, which is Berkcast with a capital B, capital C, and you can find all of us on the How to Train Dragon Valhalla Discord server. Haddock, how can people find you on the internet?
All right, the fastest way to find me on the interwebs, since I don't live on 300 social media platforms, is to go to my Tumblr page, King of the Wilder West, and yes, so King of the Wilder West, or if you need to spell that differently, Wilder West, all one word, and that's where you can find me.
Okay, so with all that said, I was HC.
I was Rush.
I've been Wolf.
And we will talk to you on. Oh,
Wow.
Wow.
Don't
Savage, I'm
disrespect.
sorry.
Man, speaking of
So
disrespect,
Savage, I'm so sorry.
you know what?
Oh,
You can
are
just go
you?
Tyler. You just get muted. Haddock, you are?
Haddock!
Ah, yes. That's been all for this episode of the Berkcast. Thank you, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye bye.